Welcome back, everybody, to Two Guys and a Stack of Comics. My name is Reed. Along with me, as always, is Mike. Mike, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing pretty good. I've got, a big stack of comics back there.
I don't know.
Um,
You've gone from a stack to a wall back there the last few weeks, so
yeah, yeah.
getting it
I'm
done.
I'm kind of going through the back stock there and trying to, trying to make
Organizing the archives of the Flash Museum.
the Flash ones are pretty well organized, except for the moderns. Yeah, it's a work in progress. What can I say?
Always good to have a stack of comics to go through.
Absolutely, right?
So what we were looking at this week, a couple of videos we're going to do just some newer stuff that have come out, but a couple weeks back, Mike, you and I, we talked about the X-Men and about how the X-Men had announced that they were canceling all of their current line of books. And we talked a little bit about what we thought we'd hoped they would do. And that I think X-Men for a very long time just kind of set the table on where X-Men's at. They did this whole Krakoan era where the mutants kind of had their own land. A lot of the characters started behaving differently, being a lot more violent. The books became a little more, I don't want to say political, but just a little more maybe social agenda driven than typical. I think it lost a lot of readers. The sales really dropped quite a bit. They started having characters like Nightcrawler just like killing people, which is way out of character. And so you kind of had where the X-Men definitely needed a reset. And so I think you and I are both positive on saying, hey, it's time. It's a good thing they're resetting. But one of
Yeah,
the things we thought they needed was to kind of reduce the line down a bit. Go ahead, Mike.
they got so many titles, like for someone like me to jump in to X-Men, I'm kind of waiting for a reset,
Mhm.
um, and to dip my toes into X-Men and Batman. I'm waiting on a Batman reset. So
Kind
I
of
love Batman and X-Men. I'll be honest, like I really enjoyed the movies, and I think I tried to get a comic or two about, I don't know, 10 years ago or so. And then remember our buddy George, I had George kind of try and give me the
get you into
rundown on
X-Men. Yeah,
where X-Men was at. And it cut my eyes kind of glazed over. I was like, oh my gosh, that's a lot. Like, you're blowing my mind here.
no, I mean I think that's been a major issue. Has been just
Maybe I'll hold off on getting some X-Men
and so there
comics.
was recently, and we'll probably do a review on the channel of Uncanny X or not Ultimate X-Men, Ultimate X-Men #1. So there was an attempt at a reboot. That book, kind of some different things going on there. But we kind of got the mainline Marvel announcement. And so at least the initial wave, we don't know if this is all the books. I have a hard time believing it will be all the books because Wolverine was not announced in there, and that's one of Marvel's best-selling books. So I have a hard time believing Wolverine's solo book is done. But there's
So,
going
like,
to
how many books do they currently have?
I think right now they have somewhere between 8 and 10 of the last count that I had.
That's a lot.
So far of this new wave, because all of those are ending, I believe, in June. So far, the new wave, there's only three announced. Now, who knows? We may get 10 or
Seven more.
more or
Yeah.
whatever, right? I would imagine there's at least one more coming with the Wolverine solo book. There better be, because that's the only corner of the X-Men universe I really am invested in right now. But the three books we got announced, there is a X-Men book, a book called Uncanny X-Men, and the third one is The Exceptional X-Men, which kind of seems like a weird title to go
Now,
with.
there's always been uncanny, right?
Always been Uncanny, and there's always been an X-Men book, at least the last kind of 30 years. Sometimes Uncanny gets canceled and just becomes X-Men. Sometimes they both run concurrently. So both those titles pretty much, have been around. Exceptional X-Men, I want to say that's been used before, but I don't remember it, to be honest. I think the troubling thing, and me and you talked about this in the last video, is we wanted to see kind of the classic characters all together.
Yeah, that's what I want to
You know,
see.
weirdly, if you read an X-Men
Dr.
book, you
X,
might want to see, the 10 most popular characters.
Magneto.
So one book, Uncanny X-Men, is going to have Wolverine, Gambit, Rogue, Jubilee, and Nightcrawler is the announced lineup, which that sounds like a very good X-Men lineup.
No Storm or Cyclops.
No Storm or Cyclops there. Now we do know in the X-Men book that will be Cyclops, Beast, uh, Magneto, the Juggernaut, Magic, and Psylocke, and a couple of others in there. That one, I mean, it's got some appeal, but again, you're kind of getting into where you got maybe one or two headliners there. and then the rest are kind of interesting. And then the exceptional X-Men book, really the only two that seem to be recognizable are Kitty Pryde and Emma Frost, who are both great characters, but the rest all seem to be focused on younger kids um, that have been there. So you
See, for
got three
me,
books and breaking it across those lineups.
I almost feel like, it would be really awesome if they just relaunched the one X-Men book and put all the classic characters in there, and and then maybe have a spin-off book for Wolverine, and then see where it goes from there, and then kind of rebuild the brand. And this is what we talked about when we talked about rebooting X-Men. Like, it would be just so cool if they rebooted and had all my favorite characters in it. Then it would
Yeah.
go like, hey, I could buy an X-Men and I don't have to worry about 37 other tertiary characters and what they're doing.
Yeah. No, and even the creatives on this, Jed MacKay is the writer on the X-Men book. I like Jed MacKay. He's a good writer. He does a good job on Moon Knight, but he's not exactly like A-list 100%. But I guess he's the closest Marvel has right now. Gail Simone, who's been writing comics a long time, she's been at DC a lot, wrote Birds of Prey. She is on the Uncanny X-Men book, and then Eve Ewing, who I personally don't really like her writing all that much. I thought she really struggled with the mainline Black Panther series. She's on the third one. So not a huge list of like A-list talent. Now that doesn't always work out. Sometimes you can get A-list talent on things and it
They
doesn't
might have something
work
in
out.
the back, and
I will
they might.
say what does worry me a little bit, a couple of the names involved, I just don't, I think we kind of get a feel for what they are as writers. And I don't know if that's what the X-Men needs right now. To me, the thing the X-Men need as a brand, I think the Krakoan era of X-Men has just put their brand in the trash.
That was when they had their own little
The
continent or
own little
whatever.
island, the
Their
era they're
island.
bringing an end to. They did so many things to so many characters that just didn't fit with who they are. And really, I mean, like it became like Wolverine was the most moral X-Men character for a while, which is absolutely, while he is my favorite character in Marvel, that is not what his role should ever be.
No.
And so to see again where they're still having the team ups with Juggernaut and Magneto, I get it. Magneto and Juggernaut have kind of always filled into that anti-hero kind of thing or villain, kind of depending upon the two. Although Magneto's done some really shady stuff in the comics before, so it's always weird for me while I love him as a character,
He's
to
a
see
great villain.
an X-Men team where he's like just part of the team. I think the overall thing is it's again not doing. You either needed to get one book or you needed to be um, an A-lister. You needed someone. You needed a big name. You needed someone who was going to put butts in seats to speak. Like, and I know there's guys who are doing their own things, but you needed someone like a Scott Snyder or a Jeff Johns or something, in my opinion, to get it right. And nothing against these creatives. I'm sure they're going to do the best they can. I'll be honest, there's a few of them who I'm not huge fans of, but that's my personal taste. I'm not going to say they're a bad writer because everybody's got different things that you like and don't like, and I'm sure they're going to try to do the best they can. To me, it's again one of these things. I see a lot of characters, though the Uncanny X-Men book, I will definitely pick up. Wolverine, a lot of classic lineup, Nightcrawler, a lot of great characters there. It's the other two where I'm just like, why is Storm not in there? Why do you not have, I get Professor X is probably somewhere in the background. I think they're hinting that he's been captured or something like that. But again, it's one of the things where like I just see X-Men keep trying to push some of these other characters. And the thing is, it's like, look, your brand right now is at a really low point. You got to develop the starters back up before you can put the backups in for
Yeah,
a
I think
sports
I
team.
think what
You know,
what happened is, they had that big explosion in the 80s and the 90s, and they couldn't they went through all the adjectives, uncanny, unbelievable, unbreakable X-Men,
extraordinary X-Men.
the
Yeah.
extraordinary, what do you call it, X-Men, throw everything at the kitchen sink X-Men.
Yeah.
And they just, to me, I think they just really watered down the brand. And now you've got literally like 50 tertiary characters, and I'm not interested in any of them. Maybe with a solid decade of a good foundation, you can make me get interested in some of these other characters. But really, you know, the the tree starts at the trunk. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And then you can branch out. But let's get the trunk nice and strong first, and let it grow a little bit. And for me to take on, or to be interested in like two or three, four other books for X-Men with all these other characters that I don't care about, and then maybe you throw one star character in there. But the thing about it is, the trunk, those characters fit together to make
Yeah.
that trunk solid, you
What
know?
made X-Men so special was the dynamics of the team. And you continue
Yeah.
to do this, the team isn't in the same book thing. And the thing is, I know you can't put 20 characters successfully in one book all the time, but you got to do that right now with where the brand's at. You got to
Yeah.
reestablish that portion of it. And that, look, how about y'all write one good one and then you worry about three?
And then start bringing in all these other characters, like,
And like it's a special treat. If you one of the things I used to love about X-Men comic books, you always got to see like Wolverine interact with like Kitty Pryde and that kind of father-daughter mentorship relationship they had. I don't remember the last time a book had that element in there. You
and
get to
see,
see the
that's,
rivalry of Wolverine with Cyclops kind of fighting over Jean. They really haven't done that. And I get that sometimes you need the characters to evolve beyond like their simple plot lines and things like that, but not to the point that it's just not even an element in the book anymore. Right? Like it's gotten to the point where the X-Men characters are unrecognizable outside of a few. And I think the job needs to be like, let's rehab these characters and put them back to where they are. I think the other thing is when you have three books all with the X-Men title in it, to me, I always liked when they differentiated enough where you have the X-Men book should, in my opinion, be it is the mutants who are heroes. They are largely superheroes fighting for the mutant cause in a world that hates them. And then I think the other books you could have, I think X-Force is always an interesting book to have because that's going to be your more violent characters carrying out the more shady things and kind of doing the dirty work, so to speak. And they've typically had that. And sit down, you just got three different X-Men teams. It kind of just seems like it's going to be a lot at the same time. And again, this is the first wave. Who knows what else we're getting? But it just seems, again, not a huge break on a lot of the creatives in terms of there's no one really in this that you go like, wow, yes, what a get. And then again, it's kind of just more, hey, let's break all your characters across the books. Um,
and for your
Hopefully you can find
flagship
one that has.
line, I mean, obviously Spider-Man is number one for Marvel, but number two is the X-Men brand. I mean, that's like one of your mainstay staples. And if you gotta have 15 X-Men books to keep the lights on, I
You
don't
got to
know.
do what you got to do.
The other thing is you got to think about the fans. I mean, I would, I'm thinking about me and some other folks that we know that are diehard X-Men fans. Like, how do you keep up buying 15 books a month
Well,
and
I
like
think
all
the
these
thing is,
different
yeah,
plot lines?
the economics don't work anymore with if you're
Yeah.
going to pay. I mean, Marvel right now is 4.99 a book, pretty much for
Yeah.
anything you really want to read. It's rare
Yeah.
you find a 3.99 book anymore.
Think
It's
about
funny,
the
like we
fans.
really quickly went from 2.99 to 3.99 to now. I mean, your baseline standard issues costing you 4.99. And the thing is, it's like, man, if I want to get back into X-Men, asking me right off the bat, $12 commitment per month at least. And who knows, these could be bi-monthly books where it's twice a month. That's a lot of investment for a brand that right now needs a lot of rehab. And I think that's just the biggest thing is like, one of the things I've always liked about DC, Justice League has typically only had one Justice League. There have been times where there's been a few, but it never really lasts long. Right. You'll have some offshoots like Justice League International or something like that. But
Right.
typically there is the Justice League book. And that always has your mainstay heroes. And where I've always had Justice League in the rotation is, I may not be able to read Superman and Aquaman and Green Lantern, but I can pick up the Justice League book and I'm going to see them all. I'm going to get the
Yeah.
greatest hits. Right now, if you're an X-Men fan, like for me, I'm kind of lucky that my two favorite X-Men are in one book. But like, I like Cyclops. I'd love to read a book that he's in, but you're going to put him in another one. I really like Emma Frost. She's in another one. I don't know if I like Emma Frost enough that I'm going to pick up a third X-Men book for $4 a month.
With a bunch of like
A bunch
lesser
of kind of
characters.
nobody's in there. And it's one of those things where what they've got to start figuring out about comic books is I think they've got to minimize these lines down. Because I know they keep saying it's, well, you may need to do 10 or 12 books to keep the lights on and things like that. Maybe. But the thing is, your plan on this has not worked before. If
Yeah.
this had worked before with the dozens of X-Men books out there, then the Krakoan era would be selling well and they wouldn't be ending it. Like the biggest thing they have to admit is you're making this change and ending this era because it didn't work. Because if it was still going well, you wouldn't cancel the books. You wouldn't be renumbering all the time. You'd be going straight ahead with the same plot. You're relaunching because largely a lot of this did not work. And
And I feel
that's
like
got to
I,
figure out what that is.
I feel like that back in the day they used to strategize a lot better. Um, it was, more concentrated, less diluted as
Mm,
it is now. But I really think, and you could tell when they would create the arc for the year, and the Simonsons, I forget which interview I was watching, but Walt and his wife
Louisa,
were
right?
talking. Yeah, we're talking about how they used to plot and plan in the 80s. And, every year they'd have their sit down session and they'd plot the arc of the DC universe, and to where it made sense. And then they held on, and you create a decent, consistent product that marches towards a point. And right now, I kind of think they're thinking in shorter terms, like what can we do in 4 months, and then if it's broken, then they change it again, and then they change it again, and you see it across the board with all comics, and it's just, it's kind of unfortunate. Like I said, I'm not an X-Men buyer. I've never had X-Men on my sub list, but once in a while I'll pick up a book. It's been years, but you know, they would grab me with the original team. If they
Yeah,
were going to do an Ultimate X-Men, which
they
with the,
did. We'll talk about that one in a different, yeah.
but if
Um,
they were going to, like, totally revamp it and do a new universe, I might hop on board because I like all those characters. I just don't know that I'm going to like a book where it's only Cyclops and a few other, that
yeah,
I don't recognize. I don't know if I'm going to like a book, you know, that splits the team apart.
yeah. No, I think it's a big problem. And this is probably a bigger video we'll have to do. But I think it's just an industry-wide mistake right now what they're doing with things in terms of look, the old models that worked in the 90s and in different things, those comics were $2 and everything else wasn't as expensive. Right now, like it's really expensive to do anything. Like you go to the grocery store and just buying eggs, flour, paper towels, and toilet paper is like $35 when it used to be 15.
I
And
just
the
did
thing
that.
is, for
Yeah, yeah.
comic books, the big thing is that the models they used to have in the 90s where you could have a million books, I don't think that works anymore. I think one, you've lost the audience to manga. And manga is incredible for the idea of you can pick up one book and that is what you have. Right? Like
Yeah.
my son reads some of these ones like My Hero Academia, and I can't even remember some of the other ones. One Piece, I think. There's no like offshoot One Piece, here's half the story, here's half the other. Or if it is, it's like two at most. Right? You
Yeah.
don't have like 27 different books in the My Hero Academia universe. I think there's one or two at most. And it's all very cost effective. It's $9.99. It's all there. You get all the storyline. It's easy to follow. Right now, if my kid's like, I really want to read X-Men, it's like, well, there's like six different titles, and this one's this one, and this is this character, and it's too much. It's an older model. If you're gonna have an expensive book, which $4.99 an issue is an expensive book, it needs to be A-list, it needs to have the great characters in it, and it's got to have a concise storyline where you feel like, man, this is going somewhere.
I don't think they
You just
figured
don't
that
have that.
out yet. And I think that they're trying to figure that out this year. It's like we got to scale down, reduce the number of books, but you've got to quit diluting some of these bigger brands, like 40 different Spider-Mans and 15 different Batmans and 15 different X-Men. You're going to have to concentrate things down, get them back to formula, and that, you got to think of the fans. Like if you're an X-Men fan and you've been shelling out, you know
40 bucks a
50
month
bucks,
to keep up with the book. Yeah.
50 bucks a month for 10 books, that's a lot. That's really a lot.
I just feel like they're trying to use an outdated model and they got to go back to something that would be just a little more consistent. And like I think, kind of close it out. One of the things is me and you talk a lot about the best book we think going right now is Conan. What I love about Conan is every book feels like it has a plan, it has an intention behind it. The story feels like it is building. It is going somewhere. You feel like you're reading the next chapter in a book. It's been 8 issues. There hasn't been a single filler issue where it's like, let's follow a side character who has nothing to do with the main story, who is not Conan, and you that's not there. You're getting A-list talent on each one in terms of the guys who are there for multiple issues. It's not something, and it's tonally consistent where you look at it and it's like, man, that's colored well, that's written well, that's drawn well. There's tons of details in each and every issue. And like Marvel and DC just keep going into this thing of like, we're going to announce a book. Oh, but it's not the full story. If you want the full story, here's 6 other books you need to buy to get the whole story. All of them are going to have subpar talent on it, or, not exactly huge talent. It's not really going to have any main plot. It's going to tie into a bunch of events during the year. It's going to have a bunch of filler issues. You're going to buy the book because we put Wolverine on the cover, but he shows up in 2 panels, and the rest of the book's about, Kid Omega or whatever. And it's like, guys, this is not working for you.
I
You
think,
gotta get on pace again.
I think that they need to understand that the market's changed in a way that they're really not prepared for, and the old model doesn't fit that. There was a day, you know, there was a time and place when you know us as fans chased down those separate storybooks.
Mhm.
But I can tell you from my personal experience, and I think you're probably the same. I stopped chasing those back in like 2018, and
It gets too expensive.
yeah.
And the thing is, what's funny is you and I are as big a comic book nerds as I know. Me and you hang out with other people at the comic book store who are as big a nerds as we know. These are the folks who are in the shops every week. These are people on Wednesday who show up in the morning to get their books. And the thing is, I feel like Marvel and DC keep chasing imaginary fans on social media who post, "Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for this," who have no idea where their local comic book store is.
And then give up
Pick
on
up
a
the
plot
issue.
line after 4 months,
And
and
those folks,
then
they're not going to
and it's
buy.
like,
And the thing that's crazy is like, me and you go to a comic book kind of club meeting thing that we've been in for years. And what's interesting is every week in that meeting, people will talk about the books they're reading. And what's funny is I don't remember the last time, and like, I don't know, we sometimes that groups get rather large. I don't remember the last time anyone mentioned X-Men in a positive light. I think when Hickman first got started was the last time anybody was talking about X-Men. And the rest, and the crazy thing is, you're not talking people who hate X-Men or people who like don't like the characters. You largely have a bunch of fans of X-Men who want it to be good badly. And are like, nah, man, you lost me. I like the X-Men. I don't like them $42 a month. Like them.
no,
And I
right.
think that's the thing is comic books keep running on this thing of just too many titles, and I think X-Men's got to do some brand rehab and figure it out. But hopefully this will be good. Look, optimistic, not really, but I certainly am going to go in. I'll buy the #1 issue for most of these, probably at least X-Men and Uncanny X-Men. But I will say I'm more pessimistic than optimistic. Hopefully, I'm wrong. I really, really, there was nothing I would enjoy more to just be picking up the book in a couple months and going, my gosh, this is great, and a return to form. I would love nothing more for that. I'm rooting for the creatives. I hope they do well. It's great for comic book stores and for comic book fans when X-Men is good. I just don't know. It kind of just seems like
Absolutely.
to be honest, it kind of just seems like we shuffled the chairs on the Titanic a little bit, and I don't know if that's gonna work. There are some good creatives involved, I will say that, but overall, I'm not too optimistic. Let us know what you guys think below. What do you think about the X-Men relaunch? Is anything that got announced with these 3 books enough that you're excited to pick it up? And if you were in charge of the X-Men, what would you do to try to get them back on pace? It's always great to hear your guys' opinion below. As always, thank you for watching, and we will catch you in our next video.